Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the previous video, we had linked up our auth provider to our registration page, and now we have access to our auth provider inside of our registration page. So now in this video, what we're going to do is that we're going to further develop the logic for actually registering our user onto Firebase. So with that said, let's get going. So now what we're going to do is that we are going to come to our register button. And then what I'm going to do is that I am going to, inside of our onPressed method of our register button, actually code up the logic for making sure or for registering the user. So what we're going to do is that we are going to start off by actually checking that all of the data that is entered inside of our text form fields inside of our forms is valid. So for that, we'll access our form key, then do current state.validate. And with this, what we're going to do is that we're also going to check that our image is not equal to null, because we do want the user to actually upload an image. If this check passes, then we're going to perform some actions. So what we're going to do is that we're going to access the auth provider, and then we're going to call the function which is register user with email and password. Then what we're going to do is that for the email, we're going to pass in the email of our user. For the password, we're going to pass in the password that we had saved for our user, and for the onSuccess function, we'll have a function that gets passed in the UID of our user, and this UID is going to be of type string, so UID, and then we'll open the body for this function, and then this function would be an asynchronous function. Oh, and for our password, we forgot, and we just have to add this comma. So once we have fixed the error, I'm just going to do Alt-Shift-F to reformat the code and command save, just to make sure that nothing got broken. Okay, so now what's going to happen is that we're going to call our function. It's going to go to auth provider, and it's going to try to create our user inside of Firebase. It'll create the user, and then we'll save the user inside of our user variable, and then we'll call the onSuccess function. And this onSuccess function, you could think of, is going to be a function that is going to do some processing in the middle before we actually show that our user has actually created, because we just don't want to create the user. We want to also save some data regarding the user inside of our Firestore database. So that, and we also have to actually upload the user's image to Firebase, and all of those functions are going to be called inside of our onSuccess function. So now inside of our onSuccess function, the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to create a variable which is going to store the result of Firebase transaction of actually uploading the user's image. So I'm going to await the process of actually calling our cloud storage service and then uploading the user's image. So first thing we would have to do is go to the top, and we would have to import our cloud Firestore service, the /services/cloud storage service, and then do command save. Then we'll come down to our actual function for registering the user inside of our register button, and we'll access our cloud storage service and then the instance of it, and then we'll call the upload user image function. We'll pass in the UID that we receive from our user, and then for the image, we'll get the image that we were saving inside of our variable. Once task gets completed, what we're going to do is that we are going to get access to our image URL. And for that, all we would have to do is that await our result dot reference, and then that get download URL. And then once we have the user's image also uploaded to Firebase, the last thing we would have to do is actually save all of the user data inside of our Firestore database. So for that, we are going to run a transaction, and this would be DB service. So we'd have to import our database service. I'm going to go to the top, and I'm going to import our database service. So /services/database service, and then do command save. So once we have our database service imported, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to, inside of our database service instance, call the create user in database, and then I'll pass in the UID of our user, the name of our user, the email of our user, and the image URL, which we already pass in. And then I'm going to do Alt-Shift-F command save. So with that, our user would successfully be created inside of Firebase. We would also upload the user's image inside of Firebase, and we'll have some data regarding the user saved inside of Firestore, or the database that we're using. So now I'm going to do is that command save, and fingers crossed this should work. But before we do that, what I would like to do is that I would just like to make sure that once we click on the registration button, we cannot click on it all the time, and that it actually changes into a loading icon. And for that, we're going to use the same logic that we did for our login page's login button. We would have a tertiary statement, which would be, we would check to see if our auth.status is not equal to auth.status.authenticating. And if it's not equal to authenticating, then we are going to show our container. And if that is not the case, then we are going to show our progress indicator. So for our progress indicator, I'm just going to copy in the line of code because it's exactly the same as our login page, where we would have an align widget, which would have a circular progress indicator as its child. And then I'm going to do command save. Now I'm just going to reload my app as a good measure. And I'm also going to bring up Firebase to just show you that for now, we do not have any other users inside of our Firebase project. And we have nothing saved inside of our storage too. So if you have your storage not initialized yet, all you would have to do is click on get started and then click on next and then click on done. And this should create the default bucket for you. And I'm just going to wait for the bucket to be created. And once the bucket is created, I'm going to resume the video. Okay, so now the bucket is created and we are now ready to actually register a user inside of Firebase. So I'm just going to move our Firebase console off the screen and we are now ready. Okay, so I'm going to go to a register page and I'm going to click on an image and I'm going to click on this waterfall image. Once we have an image selected, I'm going to put in a name for our user and I'm going to do Command K to just close the on-screen keyboard. And for the name, I'm just going to type in Tom Cruise, I guess. Once we have that, for the email, I'll do tom.cruise@gmail.com. And then password would be the same test123 password we have. And hopefully, fingers crossed, when we click on register, all of the operations should be performed. So now if you click on register, it's going to take some time. And voila, we went back to our login page and we got a notification as to our user being created. And now to confirm this, I'm going to bring in the Firebase console back. And as you can see that inside of our users, we have some new user created. And as you can see, the email of the user was the email we entered, the name. We also, for the last seen attribute, as you can see, we actually had this inside of the actual create user in database function. That's where this property was set. And then we have the actual URL to our image. If you go to our storage, you're going to see that we have a folder for profile images. And inside of that, we have actual image that we had uploaded. And then inside of our authentication module, we also have the user actually registered with the UID. And this is the same UID that is then used to actually create the user document, and the document has this ID. Okay, so with that, we have successfully completed the authentication module of our application. There's just one more video in this module that is going to come after this, in which we're going to just create the logic for actually moving to our home page once we are successfully logged in or we have successfully created a user. But generally speaking, we have implemented all of the logic related to actually logging in a user and as well as creating a user. And we have also created all of the basic fundamental building blocks of our application, or most of the boilerplate code. So with that, I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to see you guys in the next one.